Welcome to Civil War Digital Digest. I'm Will. We're back at Historic Fort Wayne and want to say thank you to the Historic Fort Wayne Coalition for providing us a space to shoot today. We also want to say thank you to the CWDD Coffee Grinders, the people who support us on Patreon. Patreon is a website where you can give a couple dollars a month, and all the people who do that money adds up, helps us raise money for preservation and shoot more of these episodes. Today, let's talk about the nomenclature of swords and sabers. Now, we've already done an episode of nomenclature for the muskets. Let's look at the edged weapons. In the 1862 Ordnance Manual, the swords and sabers are broken down into four major sections: the blade, the hilt, the guard, and the scabbard. When collectors look at them, they've added a number of additional terms. We're going to look at how these terms line up or vary and make it so whether you're a collector, whether you're a living historian, or whether you're just at one of the nation's great museums looking at original, you can talk about what you're seeing. Let's get started.
Since the blade is the heart of any of these weapons, let's start with it and work back toward the hilt and guard. The blade is the main piece of metal. Depending on the model, it may be single or double-edged. If there is a single edge, the other side is called the back. The very tip is called the point in the Ordnance Manual. Officers' swords and sabers are specified to be etched. Each blade style is slightly different from the other in what was specified to be on it. Presentation swords may have had even more custom etching. The groove in the blade is called the fuller by collectors. The Ordnance Manual simply refers to it as a groove. The ricasso is the flat area near the top of the hilt and guard. It is not mentioned in the Ordnance Manual, but is common in discussion among collectors. This is where maker and inspector's marks are often found. When you hold a sword or saber extended, the right side is called the obverse side by collectors. The left side is called the reverse side. The Ordnance Manual just refers to these as left and right sides. The tang is an extension of the blade that goes through the handle area. It is not a separate piece of metal, but rather part of the blade. The hilt and guard are attached to this. Let's move on to the hilt. The grip is where the sword is held. In most of our examples, it is specified to be made of either birch or maple and wrapped. The cavalry saber is to be covered in blackened calfskin and wrapped in brass wire. The foot officer's sword is specified to be wrapped in sealskin and fine brass wire wrapped. In the Ordnance Manual, the grip is sometimes spelled G-R-I-P-E, so you may see both spellings. The pommel is a piece of metal at the bottom of the grip. The tang will run through the middle of this. In all of our examples, it is specified to be made of brass. The ferrule is a round band found at the top or bottom of the grip, used to keep it in place and make a smooth transition to the next part of the weapon. Let's move on to the guard. This is the piece of metal that surrounds the hand and protects it in combat and gives decorative look to the sword. To some collectors, it is called the knuckle guard. In the Ordnance Manual, it is one of the three major subdivisions of the sword and is just called the guard. In the case of the cavalry saber, the guard has branches, called in the Ordnance Manual the front, middle, and back. Though the manual is silent as to where the front is, we assume it is the branch most even with the main guard that comes up from the pommel. The quillin is an extension of the knuckle guard on the other side of the grip. This term is not found in the 1862 Ordnance Manual. The counterguard is a plate of metal at the top of the hilt. In the case of the 1850 foot officer's sword and the cavalry saber, the knuckle guards merge into this. This is again a term used by collectors, but not in the 1862 Ordnance Manual. Let's look at the scabbards. Scabbards are one place where the Ordnance Manual is considerably more detailed than the collector's sources. The nomenclature of each is also often different between the specific models. Let's look at them from the end the sword enters to where the point rests. The entry point of the weapon to the scabbard is often called the throat by collectors. The piece that covers the end of the scabbard is also called the throat fitting. In the Ordnance Manual, it is called the mouthpiece for the cavalry saber and officer's swords, and a ferrule for the NCO sword. The body of the scabbard is usually made of either metal or leather, although some non-U.S. made scabbards were constructed of wood. In the officer's sword and cavalry saber, the Ordnance Manual notes there are two bands and rings. Collectors sometimes call these carry rings. The rings are used to attach the scabbard to the belt. The band in the middle, referenced by the Ordnance Manual, can also be called the center fitting. In the case of scabbards like the NCO sword we see, it is mounted to the frog or baldric by use of the hook on the ferrule, sometimes called the frog stud. As we move to the end of the scabbard, we see one more fitting. In the 1862 Ordnance Manual, it is simply called the tip. In collecting circles, you may hear this term used. It may also be referred to as the chape and drag. The chape is technically the portion that surrounds the main scabbard. The drag is the portion of metal that is raised from around it. The drag serves to protect the scabbard as it rubs on the ground. Sometimes the entire piece is just referred to as the drag.
Okay, well, there's the broad strokes of nomenclature of swords and sabers as brought to you by the 1862 Ordnance Manual and then fleshed out a little bit by some of the collector's manuals currently. Thank you for spending your time with Civil War Digital Digest. We hope this information allows you to have good conversation and find more of a connection to the American Civil War. We'll see you in a few weeks.